On today's podcast episode, we're going to be reading a listener's story of anxiety.
This is our first episode reading one of your stories and has really reminded us of how many people have and do experience anxiety.
If you have a story to share about anxiety, we would love to hear from you. Have a look at the description of the episode for more information on how to get involved.
Quick trigger warning for this episode, we will be talking about abortion. If this is something that you feel won't be great for you right now, if you feel like this isn't something you can listen to right now, that is absolutely okay. We have loads more content on anxiety. We have videos, we have podcasts. Maybe skip this one and come back next week. Thank you for listening. When I was 21, I fell in love for the first time. I met my boyfriend in high school, but we didn't start dating until we were in college. He was sweet, mature, or so I thought. He cared deeply about me, or so I thought. Our relationship was complicated. His family didn't really like me because I was too wild. My mother had her doubts about him because he was too quiet. My friends liked him, and so that was a good sign for me. After a year of dating, I found out I was pregnant. I admit I was irresponsible for not being safe, but so was he. So I got pregnant, which for the society we live in was terrible. The end of my life. I wasn't even half done with college, and I was still very immature. How could I raise a kid? I didn't tell my mother, of course, and it took me a few days to break the news to him. He took it quite well. At first, he was kind of panicked, but immediately after, he said it would be okay. He said that we could make it, and stupid me, I believed him. Shortly after, we started having fights over silly things. Our dates got dull and boring, and we tried our best to ignore the big elephant in the room, or I guess you could say in my belly. I could tell he was nervous, and as days passed, he was showing clear signs that he was maybe not okay with me being pregnant. So I started asking my friends, and they all agreed that I had a decision to make. This is when I started contemplating the idea of maybe getting rid of it. I wanted to believe that I could raise this baby with him, the person who swore me love, who said everything would be fine. But as days passed, I realised they were just words. And if I decided to keep this baby, I'd be alone in this. I was too frightened to tell my mum, and so I decided to make the decision by myself after nights of going to bed crying, desperate to find an answer. While he was partying and enjoying his life, I had to face the truth, the big fat truth. I wasn't ready to be a mum, a single mum. You can imagine how broken my heart was. Because not only was I going to end something I thought so pure and product of my love, our love, but I was also realising that the love he had for me was flawed and slowly disappearing. I felt guilty, lonely, and depressed. My fairy tale was ending. The day I decided to have an abortion, I contacted a friend of a friend who knew somebody who could give me pills to do it. In Peru, this is illegal, but ironically, everyone does it behind closed doors. At this point, I'm probably 3 weeks pregnant, and the bean, as I called it, was probably the size of a pencil eraser, tiny but powerful. I texted him letting him know that I was going to do it, and I needed him to be with me, to be by my side when I'd get sick. And he said, of course, anything for you. So one afternoon after school, I went to my friend's house and decided to get it done there so my mum would not suspect.
I took the pills and followed the woman's instructions. She said the pill was basically going to force my period and therefore I'd be also getting rid of the bean. She said I'd feel pain and later I'd need to go see her. She told me to follow the exact instructions to take the pills, and I think I did. But now come to think of it, maybe I didn't. Let me just say that the lengths women go through to have abortions are many and sad. If this was available to all of us, more lives would be saved than what people preach, because we will do it no matter the circumstances. I took the medications and waited. The first 2 hours were fine. I was watching TV when suddenly I started having cramps. No different from a period, but slightly more intense. An hour later, I was in fetal position, feeling sick to my stomach and with the sensation that someone was crushing my ovaries from the inside out. I was crying and my friend was getting nervous as time passed. She suggested it was maybe a good idea that I told my mom, to which I said no. My boyfriend, who swore would be there for me, turned off his phone and ignored me the rest of the day. By the time it was midnight, I was rolling from side to side in pain, cursing at him, cursing my love. I had started bleeding and it seemed like it would never end. It was starting to look like a crime scene in my best friend's bed. The whole night I was screaming in pain until my friend got so scared and angry at me, and at herself, that she got up and went to tell her mom, who by the way only had arrived home minutes before. She was a nurse, so she had come home very late that night. So picture this, my friend and her mom taking me to the ER, and then her mom showing up at my house to wake my mom, who thought I was just sleeping over to study for an exam, to tell her the big horrible news. I feel for my mom. She was a single mom who worked long hours and didn't need that. All I remember is waking up to her crying by my bed, and a very concerned doctor. He said that I was bleeding too much and that the doses I took was too strong or something like that. I honestly wasn't even listening. All I could think was, I failed my mom. Look where I ended up. The doctor later continued to say that it could have been serious for me had I not been taken to the hospital on time. I spent 2 days in the hospital, and the gyno checkup was a nightmare, very painful and traumatizing. I never want to go through that ever again, and never wish for any girl or woman to go through that. I can't imagine what other women go through when their abortions are later in the pregnancy. He showed up on day 2 as I was checking out from the hospital. I guess my friend had showed up at his house and caused a scene. And he also got another yell from my doctor because it takes 2 to tango. He was supposedly emotionally devastated for not being there for me. He was emotionally devastated. I got depressed after that and had intimacy issues for months before I could overcome my loss. My 2 losses, Baby Bean and him. I had to wait years before meeting someone who I could truly trust again. In the meantime, I faced years of anxiety. I grieved my could have been life for a while, and thank goodness for therapy. I was able to talk about it and let it off my chest. It took time, but I'm healed. I hope my story can help or support anyone who is going through the same thing. It's not pretty, but it's real, and many, many women go through that every year. Eventually, I got over my breakup, but it took me time to get over the fact that I was alone in this mess and had to go through horrible physical pain to fix something that should have been both people's responsibility. For me, that was more painful and traumatizing, and what left me most emotional wounds.
That story is so well written. Like, I really felt like I was there with her, and I just feel that there's not one woman, I think, that doesn't know somebody that's had an abortion, you know? And it's actually legal here to have an abortion. I was going to say that. This is more prevalent than ever, that abortion rights have been taken away from women all over the world. In America, like one of the land of the free, abortion rights have been taken away. And like the story said, it's not going to stop women having abortion. It's just going to stop them having it safely.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I honestly felt those lines, like the lengths that women go through to have an abortion for whatever reason, because they really don't want to be mothers. Some of those pregnancies are product of abuse, and so the desperation of women to just trying to get rid of that, you know, it's like insane. People will go through no matter what type of, you know, procedure to do it, and in the process a lot of women die, and that's a reality. So that was like really, and you're right, no, I don't think there's a woman who doesn't know somebody or is not connected to somebody who didn't have an abortion, which, you know,
yeah,
that's the reality. I was just gonna say, I also felt sad reading that, you know, about how she had to go through that alone. I mean, she had her friend, which, you know, was good, but like she said, the person that she wanted there the most was the guy, you know, and of course he was like, I'm out, you know, he ignored her.
And also, he didn't even say I'm out. He said, he didn't say anything. And I think if he had been able enough to say, I'm not able to do this, or even some kind of communication, so she wasn't just sitting by her phone wondering if he was going to come. Like, communication is so important. Mm-hmm. And it's not just her responsibility. Like she said, it takes 2 to tango. It shouldn't always end up on the woman having to obviously she physically had to go through all of that stuff, but emotionally too. That's something that people can help with. It's not, that shouldn't be hers alone. And having years of anxiety because of something that he could have helped with, you know?
Exactly. I think the emotional, because yes, of course you can always recover physically, but I think the wounds that it leaves you, you know, in your heart, in your mind, I think they could have maybe battled against it better together. You know, I think he could have helped a lot.
Yeah.
In that sense.
And she said she was thinking a lot about her what if life. So if she'd kept the baby and they'd stay together. I think a lot of anxiety is the what if. That is anxiety, really, to me, is constantly thinking about the future, what could have been, the what if situation, and thinking, I mean, I know that she probably thinks realistically about it as well, but kind of romanticizing it of it could have really worked and we could have been a family and we could have been happy. And I think that is anxiety in a nutshell, is constantly thinking, oh, things could be better if I didn't do this, if I didn't do this. Like, so hard.
Yeah, I actually can picture her like every afternoon, like thinking, you know, like, what am I gonna do? You know, what's gonna happen? And like, imagine what it could be, you know, like having all these mental like visualizations of like the potential result, you know. And like, I think of moments where I've been obviously I've never gone through this myself, but what I have gone through is the thinking, you know, the constantly thinking, like, what would happen? Like, what could this, you know, turn into? And like, to the point of like biting my nails or my lips, or like just constantly daydreaming or thinking, or like, that is like, it's not just that, you know, it's, I feel like people think like, oh, just stop thinking about it, you know, like, just don't worry, just make a decision, you know. But I feel like people that develop anxiety or have it, you know, it's much more intense, you know, because we're constantly thinking about it, and that's like causing us physical pain as well. You know, when I have a problem and I'm like, oh crap, like, what am I gonna do? You know, I feel it in my stomach. I feel it in my, like, I'm sweating. I feel it everywhere, and it just manifests physically for me, you know?
100%. I think the thing I hate the most about anxiety actually is like, sometimes I feel physically in a lot of pain, like all over my body, like my legs, my arms, my back, my tummy, everywhere. But you know what's really annoying is sometimes if I go out, it makes me feel better. But sometimes if I go out, it makes me feel worse. And do you know what I mean? You never really know what the right thing to do is. So I'm so happy to hear that she went to therapy and that worked for her, because I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I'm actually having my first therapy appointment tonight in years. You know, it's something that's really important, and I'm so glad that helped her. Like, I think, I know abortion's a touchy subject, especially in like, maybe not, I mean, in Scotland it's a touchy subject, but all over the world it is. But it doesn't really matter what people's opinions of abortion are. Like, nobody likes the thought of abortion. It's not a happy thing, is it? But it's about women's choice. It's not about whether you like abortion or not. And I'm just wishing we were in a world that this didn't happen.
Yeah, it's true. It's, I think, it's not a celebration. You know, I feel like when people say, oh, how could you be happy that you're doing this? I'm sure she got judged, you know, by whoever she told this story to. And I don't think it's a celebration of like, I'm doing this. It's a celebration of like, I'm free, you know, like, this is not a good thing. And I think there was something that I learned not too long ago, because I happen to know other people who have gone through this, through abortions. And I had the misconception that like abortions happen only when you already have a baby, right? When there's like already like a being there, you know. But I actually, what, you know, I learned recently is that most abortions actually, or a lot of abortions, happen the first few weeks, when it's literally like a little bit of, you know, blood or whatever, you know. That to me, that information to me was like, and reading this story really just makes me think about that, you know, like, if we had enough, or if we had accessibility, you know, and women were able to get the right recommendations and like advice from their doctors, you know, on time, when it's still just period, you could avoid lots of issues, you know, right there. First of all, you're not really, I don't know, this obviously has multiple branches of like topics to discuss, you know, but the way I see it is like, you're not really killing something, you know, it's just like your period. Like she was saying, like she got explained that way, you know, like you're just forcing your period. And so that's that, you know. Yeah, you will go through the physical pain of forcing that, because your body's not a machine. It's you know, your body. But if people hadn't, I think, were able to do it just in time before it got bad, you know, I think more lives would be saved. And I think normalizing that would be much better for women, because I think she's not just dealing with like, oh, you know, I lost my could have been life. I think maybe she's just dealing also with like the, what do you call the guilt, because yeah, society obviously has made it look this horrible thing. And so you feel guilty, you feel like you genuinely are, killing somebody, and so I feel like that can cause a lot of emotional baggage, and the anxiety. I cannot even imagine the anxiety that she went through after that, like to think about it every day. I don't think she just got rid of it and she was like, all right, I'm done, like back to living my life. No,
That's the problem with not having healthcare around this kind of stuff, is that it's not just actually the abortion. It's the aftermath. It's the anxiety, depression. It's women's health really, really matters. And it's not just, and also the really scary thing is women have to go somewhere it could be anyone that's giving you any kind of pills. It's not safe. It's just not safe at all. And you have to trust your friend's friend who knew somebody who you've never met in your life. You have to trust them with your life in order to just go through this procedure that actually in a hospital would be so simple. It's so upsetting. It's so upsetting. And I think the other part is that with anxiety is that we hate not being in control. And it sounds like this woman wasn't able to have much control. It was two very, very serious and scary options that she had. And she chose the right one for her. And I think that's really great, but she shouldn't have had to.
Yeah, definitely. While reading this story, I kind of felt lonely, that sensation of loneliness, like I'm alone in this. I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be this and that. And just that, I cannot imagine the amount of stress that she experienced, I don't think I could deal with something like that, and I think women in general are much stronger because of it. But it's so funny what you say. And I think like worldwide, women can connect with the idea that, that sentence, that line, I knew somebody who knew somebody who can help me with this, because that's what happens when you don't educate, don't help or communicate with, especially young teens, like being young, what are you going to do? You don't know anything about life, at least as when you're older, you kind of have the more, you're more mature, or maybe you're more open to share with friends who are also mature, But we're talking about a young girl who's just transitioning from like high school, to like early adulthood. I don't know. It's so sad.
It is. Yeah. And it's like, it's kind of in that way, there's so much, like there's a lot of camaraderie. Like women go through this wherever you are in the world. This is something that women go through. Even here in Scotland, it is legal to have an abortion. However, they make it really, really difficult, and they make it really, really scary. And there's people outside these clinics that are telling you you're going to murder your baby. And, there's so many things that make it hard. So whether it's legal or not, it's really hard for women all over the world. And it's not how it should be.
Yeah. And that's traumatizing. I feel like we talk a lot about mental health and like taking care of our mental health. But then again, we judge people and we attack people as a society, and what we're creating, we're just perpetuating more mental instability, more mental illnesses. And so I think the worst way you can encourage a woman not to go through that ever again is not by punishing her. I think it would be by letting her heal, not judging her. And maybe in the future that experience will be a lesson or like an inspiration or something to maybe have a child in the future. I don't know. But, to allow her to not be in that mental state of like, I just killed somebody, I just did this, the anxiety that will come after that, every single day as a reminder of what happened. It's kind of like a story that you cannot forget, In that sense, I think, yes, like you said, healthcare. Here in Peru, for example, I will say that the healthcare system that we have does not give priority to mental health. And ironically enough, there is a lot of crime that, if you think about it, is related to mental health, lots of crimes related to, that have to do with men, usually, that maybe if they were educated or offered some type of like mental health, treatment, whatever, they would have avoided or, you know, they might not have committed this type of crime. So I think mental health in general is connected to a lot of the things that happen in the world.
100%. You're totally right. It's underlying pretty much everything. And we need to give more money and more time and resources to mental health all over the world, I think.
Yeah, I read somewhere, I don't know where I read this, but it said like, you take care of your body, you will go to the dentist for a tooth, you will go to, any kind of doctor for anything physical. But nobody really invests in like the mind, right? And this applies to governments too. You know, the way their healthcare systems are set up, it's like they give priority to other things, but not so much mental health, you know. At least here in Peru, I've seen that. And I'm pretty sure around Latin America, you know, in other countries, it's similar because, you know, we kind of share the same kind of mindset, which has to improve, you know. And so, yeah, I think this would save more lives, you know, this would and help people to live happier lives.
I agree completely. And thank you so much to the anonymous woman who sent this story in, because it was really, really, really great. It was so well written, and also it was our first ever reading, and we really enjoyed chatting about this.
I am actually really excited to hear more and, you know, see how people open up and share their own experiences. That's going to be quite interesting to see. So I'm very excited.
Absolutely, me too. There's so many ways to get involved with us. You can send your anxiety story anonymously. We don't have to know who you are. Or you can come on the podcast and chat to us, or send us a video. There's so many ways to get involved if you look at the description of wherever you're listening or watching us right now. Thank you to our first writer, and we will see you in the next episode.
See you soon.